Welcome, welcome, everybody. I am Dr. Kim Gordon. I am the founder for Dr. Kim Answers, a company that works for supporting Black, Indigenous, and women of color leaders, inviting them to redefine success on their terms. We have created the Rewrite the Narrative movement. And that movement is housed in the Empowered Connection Circle, where we meet weekly to discuss topics related to leadership fatigue, rest, and more. So today we're going to be talking about something that's really dear and true to my heart, the REST framework, and honoring the leadership fatigue types that is a part of the workbook. I'm going to step off the stage and let Roxy introduce herself, who's my co host today, before we get our discussion going. And we'll take it from there. All right, girl. I'll see you later.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I am here with the one, the only Dr. Kim Answers. I work with Dr. Kim on her projects and behind the scenes at Dr. Kim Answers and the Powered Connection Circles, which is the home of the Rewrite the Narrative movement. We are so excited to have everyone here with us today. If you could check in from wherever you are, your state, your name, and what you hope to take away from this rejuvenation of our REST framework. Welcome. Let's see what is going on in the chat. So, Dr. Kim is a psychiatrist, double certified, board certified. So, we are really excited and interested to know some of the things that's going to help us rejuvenate and do more in the work that we have. Welcome, Dr. Kim Gordon.
God, I love when you introduce me, Roxy. Thank you for being a co-host for this. And I want to just welcome everyone in the room and just invite you guys to really kind of embody what we're talking about today. I remember asking one of my mentees one day, did she consider herself a leader? And she kind of paused for a second and she was like, I don't know. And I was troubled by that. Here's a person that's a medical student, already have excelled in many parts of her career, yet she was questioning whether or not she was a leader. But this conversation is not just for women who are medical students, or in the medical profession. These are for women, right? Women are defined leaders in their communities in many ways. They're supporting everyone. So I want to ask you guys, do you see yourself as a leader? And if you're wondering if you should be here or not, if you're someone who's experienced exhaustion, if you're someone who's questioned whether or not, you belong in a work setting, or whether or not you feel like you haven't taken enough time for yourself, or you're inviting yourself for the first time to rest, to take care of yourself, you're in the right place. I'm talking to you, just
Yeah.
if you didn't know.
Yes, yes. And we're so glad that you are here. And I know, Dr. Kim, this is personal for you. So before we get into all that we're getting into today, is it okay that we're moving forward now?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, well, let's do it. So, Dr. Kim, what actually made you get interested in leadership fatigue, especially for Black, Indigenous, and women of color leaders? Where did it all start for you?
I mean, I feel like it was always there, Roxy, somewhere in my heart. But I remember having this defining moment where I was a leader in the world largest psychiatric association, the American Psychiatric Association. And I was the president for the Caucus of Black Psychiatrists. And during that time, I was experiencing probably the worst case of burnout. And I didn't recognize it as burnout then. Unfortunately, for many years, I had been sort of striving, hoping that things would kind of work out and I would actually end up thriving. And at some point, I really was questioning whether or not the leadership roles were for me. And if anybody knows me, they know that I've been in leadership positions probably most of my career, always advocating for the underserved. And so a young lady who was a mentee at the time, sitting on the board of trustees, came to me and she said, Hey, Dr. Gordon, I'm on this task force. I don't know why you wasn't invited on the task force. It's funny that she led in that way, but she said, Hey, I'm on the task force. And they asked me to like really look at what's happening with Black people as it relates to burnout. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. But they didn't reach out to the Black caucus. So she shared with me at the time what she thought was private information because it's a task force and you're not supposed to share. So she shared with me a copy of the questions that they were asking psychiatrists about burnout in the membership. And lo and behold, when I was looking at the questions, I remember thinking it doesn't necessarily relate to the issues that I'm struggling with. Those questions, while it helped me identify that burnout was certainly a part of my struggle and maybe the struggle of other women and men who I were working with in the field, it didn't necessarily address the
Mhm.
reason behind the burnout. And burnout obviously have a mixed bag. A lot of people think of that as a almost like a term that really needs to be explored differently. I
Yeah.
mean, heard of things like moral injury. We've heard about imposter syndrome. We've even heard about arsony as it relates to burnout. What we haven't heard about is why certain people are placed in positions in their career when they're at the top of their career, where they're leading and they're excelling and they crash. So that's what got me inspired to do that work and create a survey for women of color to really look at their leadership fatigue styles. And I call it leadership fatigue styles for a reason because it really is addressing what is the heart of the issue. Many of us are struggling with fatigue and exhaustion when we are actually asked to do more and more and produce more.
So you talked a little bit about burnout and you talked about how they were doing a survey. They didn't ask the people that should have been the first people that they asked to take the survey.
The survey wasn't meant for the population that I was representing. The survey was meant for psychiatrists in general. However, when they initiated the survey and sent it out, the populations that were most likely endorsing burnout was coming from my demographic,
Yeah.
right? Coming from Black, it was coming from women, it was coming from other people of color. And that was curious for them. Not so much that they actually did the extra layer to reach out, but they was interested in why certain groups were endorsing more burnout.
Yeah. So, and you also talked about how not being invited into the space to give feedback. But in all of that, you still found a way to give feedback, which I think to give back to that community that was getting so depleted as well.
Well, I mean, I have to be honest, the first feedback was internal feedback. I mean, I had to start with me because clearly I had been for many years performing a duty that I think was ascribed to me based on my demographics, but also based on I guess, my personal narrative in terms of how I grew up. And so it was really important for me to take a step back before taking a step forward. And I began to like examine my own experiences. My professional from a professional context, which is important from my daily leadership activities, what I was actually doing every day and what things were I felt like edifying to me that I really enjoyed. And also those environmental factors, those things that was quietly draining me. And so I mapped those things out. And inside of our REST framework workbook, which we're talking about today, I mapped out top three depleting situations where I felt that I was being drained. The ones that kept showing up repeatedly is the ones that I decided to investigate more and do research into to develop the leadership fatigue styles. So if you are actually watching us, I would like for you, if you can, name some of the top three depleting situations that's happening right now in the workplace or at home or in your leadership roles, because we all have like community roles and leadership roles that you find that you have to do or you feel you have to do that really depletes you and drains you. If you're able to do that, just put a shout out. We're live on Facebook, we're live on YouTube, we're live on LinkedIn. So hopefully all of you guys who are watching or have the opportunity to watch can join the conversation.
What are the things that surprised you when you were in that internal inquiry?
I think the thing that surprised me the most is that I was leaning a lot into performance. So when I would think about what things were depleting me, I always thought about from the perspective is that I wasn't performing well,
Mm.
that I needed to do more, overproduce more. And so I started looking at like, okay, I was asked by right at that time I was an academic, so I was asked to produce more papers, right? And I went to I guess the leader at the time of the organization I was working for, and I said, hey, I'm interested in writing more papers so I can become a professor. And she gave me like this script. And you could tell it was a script because it wasn't coming from the heart of who I was, what I did. And the script was, well, you have to do 16 papers before you are eligible for a professorship role. And then I started thinking about like her as an individual. I started doing the comparison thing was like, well, has she actually done that many papers? And I did my research and I was like, wow, okay, I think I'm ahead of her. And so but what I noticed about that is as I was asking those questions about those depleting situations where I was asked to perform, my faith didn't come up. And that's a huge part of who I am.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
So no one had ever asked me before, how did I define my worthiness based on success from metrics that is really created from our jobs or our workplace versus what I internally felt about myself. That's not necessarily in the survey, but it was a part of the discussion I was having with myself to develop the REST framework.
Yeah. And that's so real because, you did the right thing. You reached out to your person that is, a little bit ahead of you, has attained some things, and you were looking for the next steps or encouragement. And it's like, it sounds like they didn't know you. And you were probably trying to make yourself fit into a box that wasn't even really for you because you were saying that you had even wrote more papers than they did at that point. So, and that's good. That's how a lot of Black and brown women leaders, that's like a lot of the, I guess, microaggressions they have to go through that, someone's assuming that they haven't accomplished these things and maybe not say that in a certain way, but it's definitely implied.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like she should have known that about you as well. Is that if she is your manager or, she's been helping you throughout your process, that's something that she should have known.
Yeah, I mean, the person who hired me, who should have known the most about my
Yeah.
mess and what I was capable for, was giving me the script about what I needed to accomplish. And it was like, what? Not only that, I had been in multiple different leadership roles inside of large organizations, right? So even if it wasn't that I met the checkbox for academic paper, it was clear to me that I had already reached the level of success in that, bracket that I was in at the time to be eligible for the elevation, right? But, it made me start thinking about the four types of BIWOC leadership fatigue and how it kind of shows up. And for me, it was interesting because I thought there was some overlap, but as I thought more about my personality type, it became clear which one applied to me. So I'll let you kind of get us started with that, Roxy. But the first one,
Wait,
uh,
are you about to tell us the
yeah,
4?
you want to?
So we need everyone to make sure they have their pen, they have their paper, and you're gonna make some notes because we're gonna have a little quiz, and there might be a prize. Don't want to like get things, out the back. So
We do have a prize for you. I mean, I'm a big giver. You know that, Roxy. I'm a big giver. And what I like to do is give people free gifts. And you guys, this gift is work that I did on myself, right? As a board certified psychiatrist in child psychiatry, adult psychiatry, having worked in community psychiatry, for me to examine and reflect myself and then spend hours, endless hours talking to other women similar to myself, women who are different than me, to get their opinion and then put it in a resource that you can get for free, that's the gift. So the
yeah.
prize is coming. But let me just go into the types. And I'm
Okay, so I have a little game that I'm going to play with you, Dr. Kim, to see if you remember your own work. No, just kidding. So I'll go over what the type is, or I'll say the name of the type, and you just let us, you teach us about that. Is that okay?
okay. Well, I'm going to see if you actually know the names of the types because I know you meet with us with the Power Connection sort of regular, but do you remember Roxy the types?
I remember the first one, which is hypervigilance fatigue, because that's something that I've experienced myself.
This is a good one. Okay. So many of you guys, particularly people who are in the field of sociology or psychology, probably have heard about hypervigilance. We oftentimes think about hypervigilance as being a form of like a trauma symptom, a trauma reaction. But imagine if you were the individual who's constantly on alert as it relates to social settings, settings where you need to perform, or the workplace, where you're constantly scanning for biases, microaggressions, so that you could prepare to feel safe, right? You're seeking that space that's safe for you, but you're already prepared that it's not going to be safe. So you're like scanning and reevaluating it, consciously thinking about how to navigate that. That takes energy. And you spend time anticipating a challenge, even if it may not happen, right? So you're just being prepared. It's walking into a meeting, and before you even said anything, your nervous system is already doing the math. Okay, who's in the room? How will this conversation land? Do I need to soften the blow or do I need to soften the conversation? And that constant scanning is a tax. Now, if you've heard of the term minority tax, you may realize that we have a lot of different taxes, but one is hypervigilance. Some people may call it, you know, was a word, healthy paranoia, but it really is you're paying attention to the details to recognize when it is psychologically safe to show up and when do you need to step back. And that one is very exhausting.
Oof. That is just I could just remember my heart pounding and just waiting for the axe to drop. So if that is you, please put one in the comments so that we're gonna see where everyone is in our audience. So one in the comments if that's you. So for number two for me, code switching fatigue. That is a lot, especially if you've been in any kind of spaces where you've been promoted, you're a leader now. Talk to us about that, Dr. Kim.
I want to remember before I talk about code switch T to give you just a little micro tool that can support you if you
Mhm.
identify with hypervigilance fatigue. It's
Okay.
really important that we as individuals learn how to adapt in our environment to seek psychological safety. And for me, I think the one that worked best for me was a safety anchor, right? Where I could actually start thinking about something, an object or a photo or a phrase that would really center my nervous system and make me cue myself to stay close to, calm, to rest, to not, be in that state of hypervigilance. And for me, that's a grounding technique. So if you're familiar with grounding techniques, that's one. But for me, it became a picture of my mom and a phrase that she would say, "You got what it takes and it takes what you got." Now, I actually shared that phrase with someone in the workplace. I was like, "Oh, my mom, she was such an inspiration to me. She was the leader of my family." And I told her, I told this person that she would tell me, "You got what it takes and it takes what you got." And then the next day I come to work and he has a sign on his door. You have what it takes and it takes what you have. And I said, "Oh my Lord." They have. I said got, and I meant got, and it didn't feel the same, right? When you
Right.
use a language to describe an experience that wasn't what I described as an experience that I had.
Yeah.
So it had me thinking about the second leadership fatigue, and that's code switching. That code switching fatigue, ooh, people who are linguists and in the language they know a little bit about this
Talk to us, Dr. Kim.
more. I know, I preach it more. That's the drain of adapting your communication style to fit the room, to fit the audience, right? Many of us are taught early in our, maybe elementary, junior high, high school experience that in the workplace, there's a way that you conduct yourself, not just from how you speak or your language, but how you dress, how you perform, how you show up. All of these rules that society has imposed upon individuals from different cultures become a part of a way of someone to adapt, right? So it's the exhaustion of being the only one,
Yeah.
right? The only one that may come from a different cultural background or experience and constantly having to translate your experience so others can understand it, right? I don't know why he couldn't understand God because I think the God is in the dictionary. You can actually explore that. But for him, he could not accept God as a word. And
Yeah.
so he changed it to have. And I'm just giving that like really simple example. Code switching isn't it just about language. It's not how you talk, guys. It's about how much of yourself you're able to expose in a vulnerable way and leave that door open for everyone to get to know you versus making other people feel
Yeah.
comfortable with and showing up a certain way for their comfort, right? A good example is when, we all have to work those 8-hour days. You go home and you don't even recognize your own voice because the whole day you've been speaking in a way that is comforting to someone else, but not
Yeah.
necessarily the voice that you come in. For me, it was a little bit interesting as a woman, right? As a Black woman that oftentimes is not invited to be soft, right? Not invited to be vulnerable or feminine, if we want to use that language, and then have to come home and adapt to an environment where it's sort of not was it was a requirement to be soft, yet there was no space all day to be soft.
Yeah.
So maybe my voice was elevated. Maybe I spoke with more authority or where I was more assertive than was necessary in a place where I should have felt safe or comfortable because the workplace had invited me to be not a woman,
Yeah.
place, but a man, right? To operate like a man would operate to get results. So that's a good example of code switching fatigue. If you meet the crowd for that one, that's a big one to unpack.
Question, Dr. Kim. You had talked about this once And I think it goes into like how we show up into the workplace with code switching about even the color clothes that you decided to wear, how it changed after you addressed the code switching. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that conversation. I'm very colorful today.
Right. I love your green and white outfit that you wore one time. And I just remember thinking like how terrible it would be to meet you without like knowing the colorful side of you. And how some women may feel like that, like they can't wear a floral print to work. Or can you talk to us a little bit about
Yeah, I mean, you guys see my little outfit now. Look, you never would have seen me working in the workplace without black, white, blue, brown, those basic colors that gray, those basic colors that we identify to be like more professional. I mean, even dyeing my hair to a different color is like something different for me. And it's not to say that I didn't wear color occasionally, it's just that it wasn't the norm. I went in my closet, I actually hired someone to help me, I don't know, help me redefine my success in a wardrobe category. And everything was black. I mean, how
that?
black pants do you need? I had all my pants were black.
Yeah.
A lot of my shirts was black, and it was really distressing because I didn't recognize that until someone called it out.
Yeah. So drop a two if code switching is one of your fatigue types. And Dr. Kim, can people kind of have more than one?
Of course. I mean, I'm listening to myself describe these types, and I'm like, oh gosh, I think there were periods when I were really heavily related to code switching and hypervigilance. And even
Yeah.
the others we're going to talk about, there is a little bit of overlap, but it's really important for you to lean into what types of depleting situations you may see that you kind of keep coming up for you, and what are areas that energize you, because that's going to help you define which pattern is more primary for you, right? So while we may have many, there's one that you really want to do some work on with this week, next week, in the months to come, maybe even the years to come. So while you may have overlap, one actually is predominant.
Yeah. Yep. So I'm actually using my cheat sheet. Emotional labor fatigue, number three.
That's me. So this one is hard for me to describe because I think based on my own history and trauma narrative, I mean, I didn't have experience of sexual abuse or physical abuse growing up, but I named that there because many women leaders, if you ask
Mm.
them, probably have had some form of physical or sexual abuse in their lifetime, whether it's domestic abuse or personal violence, or someone in your family or a friend who did something they shouldn't have done and maybe you didn't call it out. I'm calling it out today because people who become leaders are people who have struggled, people who have experienced adversity and overcome it. So by the time you enter into the workplace, you've already went through some emotional labor, right? To get there. And so it's so disarming when people don't necessarily see how much you had to overcome just to be in the room. So if that's you, if you have struggled with knowing kind of what is the way to support maybe your community or support other women like you, and people don't actually see that, is because they haven't experienced your struggle. They haven't walked a mile in your shoes. But for me, emotional labor fatigue came in a way that I became so accustomed to managing everyone else's feelings that I would ignore my own. And I even sometimes would say things that dishonored who I was or my abilities just to make other people feel comfortable with me.
Yeah.
That extension of being the go-to educator, right, on diversity,
A strong one.
a strong one, right? That's an unpaid, unofficial role, where you have to develop the curriculum for everybody to get the knowledge that that they can actually read a book or figure out themselves, right? That burnout is always being that strong one in a crisis, being the one who contains everyone's discomfort, who speaks up when no one else will speak up, who solve problems that other people are experiencing while they also are experiencing the same problems, and no one really asks them, "How are you? How you're doing?" Right? In real life, that can be someone who serves as a mentor or someone who's doing crisis management a lot. And those experiences are really draining and they
Yeah.
obligatory. And the worry that women in this position have is that if I don't actually carry that weight, who will?
Right. And
So
it all falls apart, right?
it's going to fall apart if I don't
Yeah.
care. Right? Yeah.
So please put three in the comments if you're tired of being the strong one. And the last one, Dr. Kim, Isolation fatigue. Brings home with that one. I don't know that much about that, the isolation fatigue.
So this is a good one, and I want to just kind of invite people to think about social isolation as actually one of the social determinants of health that needs the most work in our workplace, but also in society in general, because social isolation can lead to things like suicide, depression, anxiety, and even burnout. I'm talking about burnout from the perspective of the workplace. However, burnout shows up at home as well, and it shows up in other activities that individuals do. And it's also important to know that burnout is not a diagnosis, right? It's not like a DSM diagnostic diagnosis where you can say, I'm going to diagnose you with burnout and then I'm going to give you a pill, right? And you're going to recover. I wish that was the case because it certainly would be easier, but it can mimic and look like depression. So, isolation fatigue for me is a big one because it brings home this message that a lot of women are struggling with feeling isolated in the workplace. That exhaustion of lacking an authentic, pure connection. So maybe you work in a workplace when nobody looks like you, or no one comes from the same background as you, or no one identifies with the way you see the world. And you're having to like work all day, most of your day, doing that. And then you go home and you may go home to empty house, or you go home where you have all these responsibilities that doesn't necessarily address how isolating it feels to be in the workplace. That weight of leading without representation, no one above or beside or even below shares your identity is draining. We talk a lot about diversity in a former social political landscape. And I feel like we walked away from that because everyone is scared to say representation matters, but it does, right?
It does. Yeah.
And this one sneaks up on you, right? Some of us probably have adapted to being in the full room and being the only one, right?
Yeah.
This one kind of can feel at first like, oh, I'm going to use the word that's probably not offensive to some people. I'm the token, and then maybe that feels good for some people. So somehow you're special because
Yeah.
you've arrived and you're the only one that's like that. But over time, that becomes draining because you become the target when you least expect it, right?
Yeah.
And that's the heaviest kind of weight because you're isolated. So, and you become a target. And when you come to target, you don't have anybody that you can go to about it because you're isolated, right?
Yeah.
Those women, for the most part, I think they just fall off and nobody knows what happened to them. So I'm watching, all of the numbers that's popping up and hello,
Yes, I
Sherry.
agree.
Hello, Devetta. I see one, I see three. I don't see any touch cherry. But it's really important that we think about isolation as being that quiet hit that's the heaviest that can produce feeling tired later, but
Yeah.
actually compound effect because when you start to realize that you were having these other challenges, it may be too late to respond to it.
Yes, and I think, you had said 2 things, like, there's no one beside you, above you, beneath you that you can explain these things to, and sometimes you can't talk about the things that are going on in your workplace, especially you, the psychiatrist, knows that, but I just even think of cops or a lot of administrative positions, you literally can't talk to someone about it. So you have to do that inner work to make sure you're not isolated.
Right. And unfortunately, I think, our society is kind of taking a step backwards in that we are not necessarily addressing isolation when it comes
Yeah.
up by partnering with people early. Even if you're in an administrative role as a senior leader, you still need mentorship. You still need
Yeah.
someone who sponsors you or support you. And without having that in place, especially when you're new on a job, can be really, really challenging. And some people actually go in the workplace and they have those expectations, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
expected to have like someone that I can go to, and then they realize, hey, they took you on a job so you can be
Yeah. Yeah.
that one, the diversity leader, and they really didn't think about you needing the same type of support that everybody else got, right? So you see kind of the mentorship happen naturally with certain groups. Like, as a woman of color, I've worked in academic settings and also a little bit of corporate or private settings. And I'll see that sometimes mentorship happen naturally and sometimes it's forced. For me, it's always been kind of like a forced arrangement. Dr. Gordon needs support. I'm going to match you with this person. And the reason why I match you with this person is because, she has a black son in law. Or I'm like, I'm not interested, you know, but being people think like
Yeah.
that. But whereas someone maybe who's white, they come into an organization and the person that is sitting beside them in the office happens to go to the same school. Their kids go to the same school, and so they become friends.
Right.
And they talking about work, they're not just talking about the kids and the play dates, they're talking about work. They're leveraging that relationship for
Yeah.
them, and someone who may be a person of color, a black woman especially, is not getting that luxury because someone decided that they don't have anything in common.
Right.
And I find that people have things in common if they get to know each other, right?
And we have more in common than what we don't have in common. But I just want to circle back to something you said that you were obligated in some times to have someone that was so totally different than you, which I don't think is always a problem, but it's just the fact that there wasn't a lot of thought put into it because I think you can have a male as a mentor. You can have these different people as mentors, but I think it has to be like an intentional pairing and it has to be on both parts that both of the participants want to make that a good experience.
Mm.
So hopefully different workplace leaders will have that in place for people, but if not, then you have to go outside and look for those circles for leaders and a mentor that can help you for that next level. Like I think even you have a mentor that you check in with and a coach that you check in with. Like everyone needs that. And if you don't get it from your workplace or where you think you should be able to get that from, you have to look outside that circle.
Yeah, and I wanted to type in the different types. So if you're joining just now, recap: hypervigilance fatigue,
Yeah.
code switching fatigue, emotional labor fatigue, isolation fatigue. It's all in the workbook. I want to actually invite you guys to take a moment to open up the workbook if you have access to it already, or you want to do this later to identify your pattern, right? And I call it a pattern because again, it's not this is who I am is more of like a style that you kind of address things and figure out how that fits in with you. So basically, we you have to start with being honest. When I joined my journey from recovering from burnout, the first thing I thought was I needed to reflect more. I needed to sit with the first arm of rest is reflection. To sit with rest for a minute, and that's when I began to recognize some patterns, some core values that I had adapted over the years that was fundamental and foundational to me that I had ignored in the workplace because it didn't necessarily, I didn't feel like it was aligned with the workplace, but I recognized that I was misaligned, right? In doing that, I moved forward to the E, energize, right? So we're actually on the energize section of the workbook where we start to have an honest conversation and audit what our energy levels look like, right? I want you guys to think back for the last couple of weeks and notice where situations left you depleted and which left you energized. If you just kind of think back, it'll give you some insight into your leadership pattern. And then I want you to name those top three depleting situations and then also name your top three energizing ones, the patterns that you usually reveal, the patterns that you come up with will reveal your type. And so when you do that, then I want you to ask yourself which of the four types keep showing up underneath those depleting moments. That's your primary pattern. You may have a couple, but whichever one shows up underneath those depleting moments is your primary pattern. And I like to talk about science because as a psychiatrist, people like, she just came up with this stuff. No, I did my research. I have articles I can share with you all the different things from like allostatic workloads and stress and accumulative stress and minority attacks. I can name it. But really, science has shown us that when you name a problem, when you label it, you tame it. So name it to tame it, basically. So what naming things actually matter because our mind is kind of created in a way that once we name something, we begin to work towards fixing it, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of coming from like the brain's like system, the prefrontal cortex and how that works, and then also how the amygdala works. If we have a heightened sense of anxiety and our nervous system is always responding in that way, when we name it, it gives room and meaning. And that's why the diversity movement was so important for our country, is because naming the problem helped us actually identify how to solve the problem. So that's why everybody's trying to take the problem when they're trying to take it out of textbooks. They're trying to take it out of society and even our legal system because they know once you name it, people can actually address it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that a psychiatrist has helped build this tool, this framework that can help us process and really not work against our experiences, but work through them to make us better and to make our environment better.
Yeah.
So, what should people do to get this tool? You got to click the link, get the framework, get the workbook. That's your first step. What's the second step, Dr. Kim?
Well, I mean, the second step is really up to the individuals here. We have the Rewrite the Narrative movement as an open invitation for women of color leaders to kind of join us. The home of our movement is the Empowered Connection Circle. It is a subscribed program, but we meet weekly and we are supporting each other through prayer, through science, through worship, through leadership, all of the things we do together. And it's such a great experience. We even have a retreat that we offer for the women who join and even invite other people who are part of the movement to join. The key really is to start with the REST framework and
Mhm.
consider whether or not this movement fits you. And if it does, join us for the Empowered Connection Circle. We host these Facebook Lives. I think we're saying a monthly basis, but we may do a little bit more than that. So we host these Facebook Live, LinkedIn, and YouTube live sessions. But we also invite people to our Empowered Connection Circle as a day pass. So if you're like kind of looking at us now and you want to know more about the Empowered Connection Circle and you just kind of want to get a glimpse of it, just be on the lookout for our day pass that we offer people, and you can invite other people that you know to join in and make it an experience that's worthwhile. So click on the link, join the REST framework. We'll get your contact information, and then we'll invite you to other activities that's coming up. And be on the lookout for the Sentinel Rewrite the Narrative Masterclass. That masterclass is money. You have to pay for it, but it is something that you don't want to miss. It's coming up in September. I'm so excited to be a part of this process, have women like Roxy and others to join me every week to support not only my resiliency, but also this is my gift to myself to make sure that I never burn out again. And I certainly feel like it's been important for me as a mother of twins to have this team. So if you're a woman who needs the support, we're here for you.
Yes, yes. So please click the link, download the book, go through those modules because that will help you for the master class that will be happening in September. And I think once you're in that pattern of rejuvenating yourself, it's not just about coming together. It's like really being empowered in that moment to rewrite your narrative and navigate through life with joy and energy to do all the things that you have to do.
Thank you. And guys, when you come back again to see us on Facebook Live or join us in our ECC Pass, when you come back, I promise you we'll have more resources, more support for you. Take this moment to reflect. Take this moment to energize by actually just recognizing what comes up for you. And again, we don't expect you to have all the answers. I mean, I certainly don't have all the answers, but it's been pretty transformational to learn these leadership styles, and as a teaser, I just want to say that we're going to move forward in our workbook to talk about different types of leadership styles. So you can't know what your fatigue patterns are without knowing what style, what type of leader you are, right? And so we're going to go into more detail about the leadership styles. And for folks who know a little bit about the leadership style, can remember, can you put in the chat what type of leadership style you are, just as a teaser? Roxa, do you remember your leadership style?
I don't, and I probably need to do mines over again as well. I'm sure it's changed.
I see Davetta was here earlier and Sherry. Do you remember your leadership styles? I know
I'm looking in the chat. Sherry said it's worth it. Devetta said she loves the live stream. Hey, Sherry said she loves the research, knowing the research.
yes. So I'm not gonna tell you guys the leadership style because I want you to come back, and when you come back, we'll discuss it more. But if you get the workbook, you'll be able to cheat a little bit and have more of a conversation about that with us next time.
Yes, definitely, definitely. Well, this has been awesome, Dr. Kim. Thank you for sharing all of these nuggets with us. We look forward to connecting with you again, and we hope that you will rewrite your narrative with us. Have an awesome rest of your day.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Good to see you. I see someone who was a mentor and leader with the work that I've done. Thank all of the women who've joined threes and ones and twos and fours. We'll see you again